It's December 14th, 2010. I am 37 years old. I'm walking down a long hallway, carrying a copy of my proposal under one arm. I am on my way to meet with the man, the senior manager, who's the head of the committee that's going to greenlight my project. I am going to make a documentary film about my coworkers. It's an idea I've been obsessed with for months. It's been a long road to get to this point. Since May, I've been on a goodwill tour to promote my idea. Section I of my proposal package is a list with 37 names on it. 37 people from all across the company that I've already talked to. I've been visiting managers in their offices and chatting with project leads and hitting up my friends in the hallway for ideas. 37 names is a sign that I have thought this through, that this is serious business. We do engineering work. Generally speaking, we don't make movies. I did double major in mechanical engineering and creative writing, but I've never made a film before. Now, you can learn just about anything from the internet, but our security rules changed last year, and we no longer have the internet at our desks. We also can't bring our personal cell phones in anymore, so I've had to improvise. From home, I ordered a book from Amazon that explains everything you need to know about how to make a documentary film, and I read it from cover to cover. The movie that inspired my idea? I brought a DVD of it into the office. I borrowed a portable player from the audiovisual folks, and I've been showing short clips from the DVD to the newcomers organization and the career development folks and some senior managers. I've spoken with security and public affairs and HR. I've talked to my boss RJ and RJ's boss Craig, and I have their support to work on it. And now I've written this proposal and I've been granted an appointment with the man, and I am walking down the hallway towards his huge office. We're going to sit on the fancy chairs at the side table where he meets with his guests, and I am going to admire the books on his shelf and the view from his window and the pictures on his wall. We're going to talk about my proposal, and I'm going to ask the man to have his committee sponsor the film. It is 2 weeks before Christmas and 2 minutes until a smiling admin will say to me, "The man will see you now. Step right this way." I will sit in the fancy chair. I will be calm and confident. The man will ask insightful questions. He will nod at my thoughtful answers. Once I've explained everything, he's going to shake my hand. He is going to pledge to pass on my proposal to the full committee. And when they give me the thumbs up, I am going to become a documentary filmmaker, and my entire career is going to change. 3 weeks later, I'm sitting in my cubicle, staring at my computer, trying to get into gear and start the new year. In the early afternoon, an email pops into my inbox. It's from the man. This is it. I open it up. From the man, date January 6th, to me, carbon copy, Craig and RJ, subject documentary. Eric, the Leadership Council met this morning and discussed your initiative related to the career development documentary. The council is not willing to support this effort on the basis that we do not consider the return on investment establishes a compelling business case. Thank you. I stare at the email. 3 days after my meeting with the man, there was a company-wide announcement that we were all going into a 2-year pay freeze. The news arrived just in time for Christmas. That was bad. This email is worse. It stings and it burns. A week from now, I will have made some sort of peace with it. A week from now, I will issue a memo to file that will include an attachment with all of my research and planning. I will address this memo to some unknown lucky future employee who may be given the chance to make a documentary film at work. I will express my hopes for their wildest success. I will wish them strength for their journey. I will sign my name at the bottom and give the memo to my admin so that she can issue it. A week from now, I will tuck this project away on some high shelf in the corner of my mind, and I will go back to doing my day job. I will focus on real work. I will move on. But today, I wallow in my sense of failure and rejection. Today, the man said no. I sit in my chair and I look at the screen and I take it all in. The TV has my full attention. It's nighttime and I am sitting in my hotel room. It is 2006. I am on a business trip to Lynchburg, Virginia. A little while ago, I was channel surfing. I don't have cable at home, so hotel TV is a real treat. I got sucked into a documentary film that had already started, and so I have no idea what it's called or who made it. The film is about Hurricane Katrina, which hit New Orleans almost exactly a year ago, and there is devastation all over the screen. The film is a punch to the gut. Story after story of people feeling totally helpless as the rains and wind come, the city floods, and their lives shrink down to escaping the rising waters and waiting for a rescue that takes days and days to come. People lose their families, their homes, everything they've built up over a lifetime. The people on camera want to know where their government is. The people on camera ask pointed questions about whether the response is slower or smaller, because most of the people who are suffering the worst are poor and black, and so nobody cares. The people on camera are weeping and cursing. They are in despair. They are defiant. They are not victims. They are survivors. The movie goes on and on for over 4 hours. But there is something about the simplicity of people looking into the camera, telling their stories, that hooks me until late that night when I finally reached the closing credits. The name of the documentary? When the Levees Broke, a requiem in 4 acts, directed by famous black filmmaker Spike Lee. I am sitting in a pew in the sanctuary of Friendship Community Church in Pittsburgh. There are a few dozen other people sprinkled around the room. A portable white screen has been set up in front of the altar, and our guest tonight is projecting a film onto it. It's February 2010. As part of Black History Month, my church is hosting the screening of a documentary by a local black filmmaker, Chris Ivey. His film is about the history of development efforts in East Liberty, the neighborhood next to Highland Park, where I live. Many of those development efforts forced poor and minority residents out of their homes, and the film, called East of Liberty, explores the reactions and perspectives of those residents and local business owners and politicians. I recognize a lot of the people and buildings. It's disturbing to see so much ugliness playing out in places I pass through every single day. I don't just live in Highland Park. I am president of the Neighborhood Community Council, and as I watch the film, I find myself thinking, this is something we all need to see. At the end of the evening, after the question and answer session, I walk across the sanctuary and introduce myself to Chris Ivey. I invite him to come to one of our upcoming community council meetings to share his film and to lead another evening of conversation. He accepts. Back at home a few weeks later, I sit down at my computer and start typing up an article for our community newsletter announcing that Chris will be visiting us to share his film. In the intro, I write about past documentaries I've watched, including When the Levees Broke, which drives me to Wikipedia because I want to make sure I get the details just right. The Wikipedia page says, in the style of Michael Apted's Up series, a documentary series that interviews Apted subjects every 7 years, Spike Lee has planned to interview the Katrina survivors at least once more. Up series. Huh. I click the link. Up series. In 1964, British journalists interviewed and followed around and filmed a bunch of 7-year-old kids living in and around London, watching them play and eat and go to class and hearing what they had to say about school, the jobs they hoped to get as adults, marriage and kids, people of different backgrounds. The film, 7 Up, was supposed to be a commentary on the British class system, and it was supposed to be a one-shot deal. But one of the original researchers, Michael Apted, took it upon himself to chase down and interview a bunch of those same kids 7 years later and put out another film, and then do it again 7 years after that, and 7 years after that. And now in 2010, the series has gone all the way through 49 Up and has become, for all intents and purposes, a documentary film about life. I find all 7 films at the Carnegie Library, and I devour them in just a few weeks. I am enchanted. Each film has flashback footage about what the subjects had to say about marriage or jobs or money or whatever in the previous films, and so you see them age right before your eyes. All of the beauty and joy and tragedy of life plays out in front of you. One of the people in the film, one of the sweetest, happiest kids ever at age 7, develops what we would recognize today as a mental health condition, but at the time, it goes untreated. There are years when he is homeless. While talking to the camera, wearing his filthy coat, he rocks incessantly back and forth. He fidgets. He doesn't make eye contact. Then in later installments, his life turns around. He gets medication, calms down, gets elected to political office. He is grateful for the blessings in his life. It is amazing and heartbreaking and transcendent. And as I watch, I realize that all I want to do is make a similar film of my own, because the Up series is one of the most beautiful cinematic experiences of all time. And so I start thinking about how to do that. And the answer is that I should make a documentary film series at work. I should pick some people, ask them questions about their careers and their hopes for the future, and get footage showing the work that they actually do. Then I'll follow up with those same people every few years, putting out film installments along the way. I find a book about how to make documentary films and I read it from cover to cover. I take a copy of the Up series into the office so I can start showing it to people. I begin the first of my meetings with 37 people from all across the company to talk about my idea. In the Up series, you get to see people aging, and you also see the country and the world changing around them. As I talk to my 37 people, I tell them that the same thing will happen in my films. The employees will grow in their careers, and we'll also get to see how the company changes over time. That's interesting, one of the managers tells me as we sit in her office. We just had someone who was an intern last summer come back this year and start working for the company full time. When they came back, this former intern said, "Wow, the lab sure has changed a lot in the time that I've been gone." And I asked, "Really? What do you mean?" And the new employee said, "Well, when I was here last summer, you were allowed to bring your cell phone in, and everyone had the internet at their desks." Another office, another meeting. The manager listens to my pitch, but he is skeptical. I have real work that my organization has to get done, but we don't have enough people to do it, he says. And you and your bosses think you have enough time to run around making movies? I have serious questions about your priorities, and maybe about how the headcount is allocated too. Out of 37 people, this is the only time I get negative feedback, and I shrug it off. I thank him for his honesty, and I get out of his office. In my cubicle, I am keeping a list of the people I'm talking to, and as the list grows from 20 names to 25 to 30, I am also writing down lists of ideas about the types of people I hope to film, the questions I will ask, and the sort of footage I want to get. I start figuring out the logistics of filming and approvals and editing. I write down the answers to commonly asked questions I'm getting about what will the purpose of the film be, and how will I pick the people, and how will I handle the footage, and what would happen if a person from an earlier film suddenly leaves the company, and how much money and effort will the whole project cost. As we start approaching the end of 2010, it becomes clear that in order for this project to happen, it's going to need a company sponsor. And since the films will focus on career development and growth, the logical sponsor is the company's leadership council. I put the finishing touches on my proposal package, and I set up my meeting to see the man. After my rejection email from the man, after I issue my memo to file, after I tuck my dreams away on a high shelf, I start throwing myself back into stuff that everyone can agree is real work, and there is lots of it. I lead a materials risk assessment. I write a guide on statistics. I coordinate our annual 1-month time tracking campaign. It's a busy time for everyone. In March, a huge earthquake sets off a tsunami that floods the coast of Japan and leads to the reactor meltdowns at the Fukushima nuclear power station. Over the next few weeks, a lot of my colleagues who are nuclear and material experts and other employees from around the company as well get sucked into teams to support the national response efforts, and many of the rest of us have to pick up the slack. These efforts don't directly affect me, but they touch a lot of people I know. I'm coordinating dozens of engineers who are researching thousands of historical documents. I spend the summer on temp assignment at our field office in Lynchburg. I go to a professional conference on simulation modeling. I start a department newsletter highlighting improvement efforts we're pursuing. I facilitate a whole bunch of upward feedback sessions. The real work pays off. Word comes down that I'll be getting a promotion. One day in November, I am sitting in my cubicle, working at my computer, and I get an email, the weekly company newsletter. It's usually pretty routine stuff. Announcements about new hires and upcoming retirements, changes to corporate policy, next month's blood drive, safety reminders, the children's holiday party. And this week, the company is launching the next season of a program that puts together teams to tackle cross-disciplinary problems, a program that is typically geared towards new hires who will get to meet new folks and learn about different opportunities across the lab. All of these projects are proposed by a manager who will sponsor the teams, and those proposals are all endorsed by the general manager's staff before they get announced company-wide. And so this week, they're announcing the projects and looking for volunteers to be on the different teams. I read the list of projects. One of them catches my eye, and I freeze. I read it again. Almost without conscious thought, I navigate to the menu at the top of my browser, and I send the newsletter page to the printer. I leave my cubicle, and I rush down the hall. I see that the door to RJ's office is open, and that he's in there, and that he's alone. I stand by the printer in a fever of impatience, waiting for the printout, the banner page with my user ID, and then the page I really want. I scoop it all up, and I fly into RJ's office, coming to a halt just inside his door, standing next to the nice table where he visits with his guests. RJ is typing away on his computer, but he stops when I burst in. He looks up at me. I hold the sheet of paper with the announcement out in front of him. RJ, I say, earlier this year, we had all those people across the company who spent weeks and weeks supporting the U.S. national response to the Fukushima nuclear accident. RJ nods. He knows all of this. He was one of those people. He is part of the public affairs branch of our emergency response organization. He helped monitor the news outlets and see what the Japanese government was saying publicly about the meltdown. He had sat in on late-night calls in which a US-based company was trying to send equipment to Japan in support of the response efforts, but people on the call did not know how to translate concrete pumper trucks from English to Japanese. I take a breath. I give the piece of paper a little shake. I say, "There's an announcement in this week's lab notes. The company is looking for volunteers to sign up, to be on a team, to make a documentary film about our company's support of the Fukushima response efforts. All I need is my boss's permission to sign up." I pause. I can't believe this is happening. "RJ," I say, "I have to do this." I look at RJ. He looks at me. RJ says, "Absolutely." So many times, Black History Month focuses on the past. The Civil War, the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Barack Obama. Since history is always past, that's okay. But we don't tend to think as much about another piece of it that's really important. Black history, Black achievements, Black culture, Black people, past and present, can inspire you for the future, can help push you to discover or create or found or invent or organize, to become the person that takes it to the next level. I've discovered over the last few years that at my core, I am a storyteller. I love making people laugh or cry or think. I love crafting beginnings that hook the audience, middles where the characters struggle and grow, endings that are meaningful and memorable and satisfying. I have plenty of stories of my own and I love telling them, but I also passionately believe that every person's journey, each person's story from the heart, has moments of beauty, of struggle, of triumph. My team, working part-time for more than 4 years, eventually completed the documentary in 2016. There were many steps along the way. One of the early ones was research interviews, where we called up every employee who had helped support the Fukushima response efforts, and we asked them to tell us what they did. One of those calls was with a woman who'd spent her time helping to buy stuff that needed to be shipped to Japan. At one point, she's on the phone with some vendor trying to buy equipment or material, and the vendor quotes her a price and tells her how many weeks or months it's going to take to fill the order. The vendor has a backlog and is going to fill the earlier orders before getting to hers. "That's not going to work," she tells the vendor. "We need this stuff right away. It's going to Japan to support the disaster response efforts." "Oh," the vendor says, "it's for Japan." The vendor puts her order at the front of the line and gives her a discount too. This was a great story. I really wanted to include it in the film, but when I went back to her later and said, "We're starting to put together the final script and schedule the filming, would you tell that story for us again?" She said no. And though I begged her, I couldn't change her mind. "I'm not an engineer or scientist," she said. "I just bought stuff. I didn't solve any of the technical problems, and the people who did are the people who should be in the film." She told me that in the big picture, her story just wasn't that important. Over the course of the project, I had read every scrap of research our team had gathered. every interview. We covered the walls of an entire conference room for 2 weeks while we storyboarded the whole film from beginning to end. Making the big picture was literally my job. And so, while I want to be gentle about it, I am very confident when I say this. She was wrong. Her story was important. Her story deserved its time in the spotlight. You don't have to be a head of state or a military general or a senior manager or rich or white or male or straight to have a deserving story. You don't have to be an engineer or scientist or even a college graduate, a great public speaker or a perfect parent. You don't have to have your whole life figured out and working flawlessly. You have, we all have, amazing stories. I believe that if we only took the time and space to listen to those stories, we would recognize pieces of ourselves in every other person. That is why I hope to have the opportunity to help some of you tell your stories. It's why I labor with so much care to help bring people's stories to life, to see that they get told with all the respect and dignity that they deserve. That is what Spike Lee did for many of the survivors of Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. It's what Chris Ivey did for the displaced residents and business owners of East Liberty. My long and twisting path to becoming a storyteller owes something to both of these Black artists, and I am grateful. I hope someday to become as courageous, as patient, as vibrant as they are. Happy Black History Month.